Hello, guys and gals, and welcome back. So this is episode 2. If you didn't catch episode 1, I definitely recommend catching that one first. This is basically one of the developers from Diablo II who's working on a new project called Moonbeast, and the new project is supposed to be touted to be a Diablo II's kind of successor. And he's talked about a lot of interesting things so far. If you missed the first episode, we already went over itemization, eye level. 1 of 108. And we also went over, where's the second one? A little bit on item tiers and a little bit on runes. Itemization 2 out of 108. And now we're going to go over itemization 3 out of 108, which is ABC, Won't You Sing With Me? You, L of 1, posted, nobody remembers crafted items, and so we must respond. In this post, I'll share some of our preliminary thoughts on crafting. I don't really agree with that because crafting items in Diablo 2 are actually among some of the most valuable items in the game. In fact, crafted amulets can literally be the most valuable item in the game depending on how they roll. Specifically, crafting gear, crafting other types of stuff will be possible too, but I won't be covering that yet. Note that crafting is still in the early design phase, so there's still plenty of room for community feedback and discussion. Designs. Crafting actions are based on designs, aka recipes, which you need to unlock individually. Designs can drop from mobs, but are more often found in things like bookshelves and chests. You may also get them as quest rewards, and they'll also occasionally show up at vendors. Unlike most loot, they are most often instanced drops. This is necessary because they're tailored to the ones that you already know. However, unbound designs will occasionally drop to promote a bit of trading. They are used on pickup, and except for the unbound ones, don't take up inventory space. Each design specifies what item type they can be applied to, necessary materials, and small group of related affixes that it can apply. There will be designs for all non-unique affixes in the game. Base. For gear crafting, you start with the white item that has sockets. The number of sockets is an indicator of crafting potential. Materials. We don't want a gazillion materials. There are just 2 basic types of materials used in crafting, elemental cores and runes. For the most part, they can be stacked. Elemental cores mostly drop from mobs and are typed to an element and come in 9 tiers. For example, a cinder is a tier 1 fire core, and an ember is a tier 2 fire core. Elite and champion monsters can drop noble cores, and bosses can drop unique cores, which are tied directly to specific bosses that drop it. Non-unique cores are stackable, but unique cores are not. Cores can also be combined to form higher tier cores or split to form lower tier ones. Unique cores have both fixed and random affixes drawn from a specific pool tailored to the boss from which they drop. A core can be socketed directly into gear and provide a benefit to their element. This benefit depends on the type of item in which the core is socketed. For example, a cinder socketed into a can jar, a fire elemental dagger, may increase the dagger's base fire damage by a small percentage. When it's socketed into a sax, a water elemental axe, it will add flat fire damage, and when socketed into a fire elemental wand, will add bonus damage to fire skills. And when socketed into a fire elemental chest armor, will increase fire armor by a small percentage. In general, it's very inexpensive to non-destructively remove socketed items from a piece of gear. Generally, just a small amount of gold, because we want to encourage players to experiment with socketing stuff freely. Cores are primary components in crafting designs. In general, cores are used in designs that apply affixes related to their element and tier, but will generally have higher numbers when crafted than when simply socketed. Unlike socketing, designs are less restrictive with regards item type. For example, if you want to apply bonus melee damage to a wand, knock yourself out. Runes. Like cores, runes can be socketed directly into gear, but provide a benefit that is less tied to particular elements. A specific combination of runes socketed into an item can form a rune word, which will have a unique set of abilities tied to that rune word. I can't reiterate enough that this time around we intend to take extra care that low and mid-level rune words especially are not overtuned. Runes are also primary components in crafting designs. Crafting basics. Forging crafted materials, or forging crafted items, simply involves taking a non-unique item with an empty socket and the necessary materials for the desired design and applying them at a crafting vendor. Each design applies a random affix chosen from a small pool tied to that design, either consuming a socket or replacing an existing affix of the same group. There are no failures. Noble and unique cores may be components of specific designs that call for them, or they can be used as kickers in regular designs to improve their roles. Once an item has been forged, its color changes to distinguish it from uncrafted materials. As long as it has additional empty sockets, it can continue being forged with additional designs. An item that has had all of its sockets consumed is baked and cannot be crafted further. As the creator, you may even choose to customize it with a name. Crafting events. Occasionally, special events will pop up that allow for one-time crafting opportunities. These events can be tied to randomized quests, special encounters, shrines, magical tomes, etc. Conclusion, that's about it for now. We wanted to create a very simple and easy to understand system that wouldn't require a myriad of materials, but would have nearly unlimited depth. With this system, you can imagine that the full gamut of non-unique items and even many unique ones are potentially craftable. As always, send me your thoughts. P.S. While writing this, I dreamed up a potentially cool unique item. Ostenez Purifier is a box in which you can place an elemental core. Killing the mobs of the related element will empower the core within, eventually increasing its tier. Pretty cool, right? I love this job. Let's move on to number 4. Number 4. I believe this is number 4. Skill trees. He didn't actually put 4 on it. First off, let me preface this post by saying that this is just a very preliminary skill system that's under consideration. We very well might not go in this direction, but wanted to share it with you, hopefully get some feedback. Axioms. No giant web of mostly passive skills. We tried this in Hellgate London. They also created Hellgate London, by the way, as well as Diablo II. Inspired by one of the Final Fantasy games. Please forgive me for forgetting which one, but it's too complicated for the benefits. Skill levels are cool because plus skill levels on items are cool. Takes bow. Skill books from OG Diablo are also cool, but need to be rethought for a new context. Skill trees are cool too. They give some level of guidance to new players and are great organizationally and enable things like plus skills in a tree. The Diablo II system, where you often spend 20 levels putting points into the same skill, is not cool. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I kind of like putting 20 levels of points into a skill. It makes it feel powerful. We want you to make one meaningful decision about skills each time you level up. The Diablo III skill system of skill runes is cool. Not to be named runes, though. I didn't really think the Diablo III system was cool. It's perfectly okay for some classes to be weapon dependent and others not to be. I definitely agree with that. I like some classes to be weapon dependent and some not to be. Like in Diablo 2, your sorceress's spells are not determined by her weapon damage, whereas in Diablo 4, your sorceress's skills are determined by her weapon damage, which I don't necessarily like that. Cooldowns are generally not cool. The team isn't unanimous about this, but my stance is firm. Mana potions are not cool. Well, I mean, I like mana potions. I don't like cooldowns as much. I think that Diablo 4 went way too heavy on the cooldowns, in my opinion. Being able to quick cast skills from your hotbar is a no-brainer. Exactly. That was something that always should have been in the game, and I don't know why it wasn't. A balance must be struck with regards to respecking. I definitely think that respecking is one of those things that should not be infinite. I feel like at some point or another you should be locked into your character. I like Diablo 3's 3 respects, or Diablo 2's 3 respects, and you can earn another one by, doing content. I don't necessarily like the infinite respec options of some other games. It just doesn't feel as nice to just be able to change my character whenever I want to whatever I want to, as many times as I want to. I don't like infinite respects. And I definitely think a balance has to be struck. Obviously, you should be able to respec your character because everybody makes mistakes. In the original Diablo, there was no respecs. Diablo 2 had no respecs, and you were basically just stuck with what you got, right? Well, that wasn't cool either. Having 3 respecs and an earnable 4th seems like a very good balance. However, the Diablo 3 armory is pretty cool. This list is just off the top of my head, and let me know if I left anything out. Every class has 3 trees, which I definitely like. Each tree has 10 to 12 main skills, with each main skill having 4 to 6 options. Every tree has one movement ability that is not a skill and doesn't require investment. Over the course of 99 levels, you get 13 main skills unlocked and 88 option points. Once a main skill is unlocked, it gains levels automatically, according to a schedule or formula that depends on various factors, up to a maximum of level 20. Spend option points to buy options of a skill that has been unlocked. Different options may have different ranks, but the max rank is 5, and a rank is an option most often cost 1 point, but may cost more. These are somewhat analogous to Diablo 3 skill runes or last epoch specializations, but simplified. I think I can see what they're trying to go with here, which is basically you choose a main skill and then you choose ways to upgrade that skill, or options for that skill. And I guess I can understand what he's trying to say back here, which is where just putting 20 levels into a skill doesn't really seem as cool as what he's explaining, which is choosing a skill, which levels up on its own to a maximum of level 20. So it's still going up. But then what you get to choose is more fun. Instead of just putting more points into the skill, now you're choosing options for the skill, which is interesting. But then that brings us back to Diablo 3's skill rune system, which I wasn't particularly enthused about. But then again, Diablo 3's skill rune system didn't really have skill points, and it didn't really have anything. You basically just got the skills at a certain level, and then you just chose them, and then once you chose them, you could choose options for them, but there was no skill points involved. So I don't really see where he's drawing the analog here to Diablo 3's skill runes, so much so as just simply the fact that the Diablo 3 skill runes had options, I guess, and I guess that's what they're saying, is they want the skills to have options, which is interesting. And Diablo 4 kind of did the same thing, which is where, like, say you choose corpse explosion, and then you get to choose between a shadow form of the corpse explosion or another form of the corpse explosion, right? So you get options, which I'm not exactly, I like options. Options are nice. Choose a tree along with your class at character creation, which determines your starting main skill. Interesting. So you get to choose a tree, one of the 3 trees, which chooses your main skill as you level up. Kind of offers some more interesting level up options. At level 12 and 24, you unlock another tree, and you may pay an additional cost, possibly in option points, amount to be determined, to multi-class and unlock another class's skill tree. It's possible that a further penalty to multi-classing is reduced to main skill auto leveling speed, but this may well not be required to maintain balance for reasons outlined below. Every tree has skills that make it very obvious that a character has taken that tree. For example, dual-wielding axes is a visual indicator that a character has taken the destroyer tree, no matter what their base class is. Items can give plus level to the main skill that you already have, plus level to all main skills in a tree, plus level to all main skills for all trees for all classes, which counterbalances multi-classing, and may allow for the penalties for multi-classing discussed above to be minimized, or rarely plus level to all main skills. Edit, they may also give plus level to all skills in a subclass or a multi-class set, but that feels like an expansion thing. Items can unlock an option at specific level for a main skill you already have. Rarely items can grant you a main skill, and sometimes option you don't have at a fixed level. Shrines might grant you the same for a short period of time. You can find skill books, each of a specific skill, that grant you a permanent point to a skill you already have. They have an increasing stat requirement to read for each book. This sounds similar to Diablo 1. That you've ever read. A filter of Leth can wipe out these bonuses. These bonuses are not otherwise subject to respec and thus are a significant deterrent. Otherwise, you can gain respecs via quests or crafting. When you do respec, you can choose to imprint your skill loadout in something like an armory, allowing you to switch back and forth without having to respec again. I guess that's what he's talking about when he said the earlier up here. He was talking about the Diablo III armory, which it's basically what, loadouts. So it's skill loadouts, which I mean, having like maybe 2 or 3 different skill loadouts to be able to switch back and forth between, I'm not necessarily against. Skills are broadly categorized as active skills, which are intended to slot into their either left or right mouse buttons and cost very little, if any, mana. As bombs, which cost significant mana and are intended to slot into the hotbar, or passives, which are intended to be equipped in a passive bar. In general, a tree should have 3 active skills, with the rest being bombs. Passive skills are generally attained via options. That's the general outline of the thing anyway. As always, questions and comments and additional ideas are greatly appreciated. This game is very much so in the development stages, and yeah, I mean, there's definitely still time to get on here and talk, talk to basically the Diablo 2 developers and have fun going over some of that stuff. And I just realized my green screen got pushed out of the way because doggo. Doggo. I definitely like the fact that they think skill levels are cool. I'm kind of a little bit worried about the fact that they constantly keep mentioning Diablo III, which I don't really feel like was a good example of what ARPGs should aspire to be. I mean, the armory system is kind of just, it's just, the ability to switch between builds, so that's not really that big of a deal. And the Diablo 3 skill runes, I feel like he kind of emphasized them a little bit too hard. They're just options. There's no skills. There's no actual like points, no skill system. There was no skill system at all in Diablo 3. So the runes kind of represent something that he's looking at to add into an actual skill system, but I think it's also important to note that Diablo 3 just doesn't have a skill system. It's non-existent in Diablo 3. Let's move on to his 5th post, which I believe is his last post, his most recent one, and we'll have to keep our eyes out for any new ones. Get your charms here, itemization 5 of 108. If you really like the charm system for Diablo 2 LOD, you're welcome to mod them in. But for our core game, I think we'll give characters the dedicated charm slots. Maybe 3 to start, with an extra slot per difficulty level if we even have those. Could be that you get 2 shrunken head slots when you unlock the Witch Doctor tree, or maybe you've unlocked the Exorcist tree and you get an extra holy symbol slot for each rank you have in that skill option. Or perhaps you've picked the Kabbalist tree and you don't get any extra charm slots, but your golem gets a bunch of glyph slots. Note, all these trees are made up on the spot and aren't at all skill trees that we're contemplating. I'm pretty okay with leaving out different charm sizes too. What else can I say about charms? What is their purpose? Obviously, with LOD system, you were meant to make a choice between quality of life, inventory space, and power. But let's set that aside. So this is coming from an actual Diablo 2 developer, and I think this puts a pin in the argument that may have existed for a long time, which is charm inventory. Should a charm inventory exist, and should a charm inventory be considered cheating? And I think that this pretty much proves without a shadow of a doubt that charm inventories are indeed cheating, because if inventory space is the trade-off, then when you make a charm inventory, you are essentially bypassing the penalty that they have imposed upon you for putting the charms in your inventory. And this is coming from a Diablo 2 developer who literally is telling us that the purpose of charms was to force us to make a choice between inventory space and power. And by adding something like a charm inventory into the game, you are essentially removing that negative and then therefore cheating. So charm inventories are cheating, confirmed. For the most part, the purposes of charms is pretty simple. Give players more stuff to find. Unlike other gear, you can equip several of them, which makes the choice of which charm to replace when you find a new one have a very textural feeling from the choice you make with regards to most Huster gear. There's a hint of it with rings, but it's much more pronounced with charms. These differences in choice style are good. Individually, they should be less powerful, much less powerful than any other type of gear. There probably aren't a lot of charms that will do much to alter your playstyle or your build. However, the little bonuses you do get, stats, resistances, that you can get from charms help smooth out the kinks in equipment loadouts, letting you hit a particular breakpoint with a greater variety of gear. I hope to not have any categorical plus skill charms, even unique ones. I'm not even sure I'd want charms that give single skill bonuses. There's a balance to that, and maybe they'll show up on class specific charms. We'll have to see. I guess I can also see a place for charms that slightly tweak individual skills in various unusual ways that are less directly tied to power, like changing their VFX color. I think Magic Find and other similar affixes do really well on charms, and the game could expand on the plus find affixes with a greater variety of options. Do you really want class constrained drops? Why not have a version of item find that makes it more likely for you to find class items, or charms that increase the number of shrines you encounter, treasure goblins, the quality of loot from breakables, the flow rate of gloom when in your presence, light radius, affixes that don't really belong on standard gear can find a home on charms. Categorically, I think we can say that charms can be used to affect your play experience with less of a direct emphasis on your character's power. Finally, it's obvious, but an interesting game around charm crafting would be nice, unlike the crafting system I outlined for gear. When you're pretty much putting specific affixes on items, I think the charm crafting system should probably be more random, similar to crafting existing in Diablo games. There's something that feels very right about going to a charm seller and buying a grab bag of unidentified charms. Thanks for reading. As always, your feedback and ideas are appreciated. Somebody said, I appreciate the notion of protecting players from making their own lives miserable by going inventory slot based power. I mean, that's pretty much what goes on, right? I mean, we look at it and we're like, okay, but these items are powerful, right? We're going to choose the power over the quality of life. So we deliberately sacrifice our quality of life for that power. And his comment is absolutely apt, protecting the players from making their own lives miserable. Because if you give a player the ability to sacrifice their quality of life to have more power, more often than not, the player will sacrifice their quality of life to have more power. That's just how it works. And so when they made this choice between quality of life and power, maybe somewhere along the line, somebody thought, hey, nobody's going to choose to completely fill their inventory and not have any inventory space whatsoever to work with, just so they can get a little bit more power. And boy, were they wrong, because, pretty much every player in existence does just that. We will fill our inventory to the brim to sacrifice our quality of life. And I think at a certain point, he's right in saying that, that shouldn't have ever been made a a choice for the players, because making that choice, the player is almost always going to choose the power over the quality of life. But he has some interesting options here, which I think would kind of fix things. Obviously, limiting the number of options, or the number of slots. So giving us specific slots and then limiting the number of slots would make us choose more carefully what we put in those slots. Although it's interesting that he talks about not having any plus skill charms. Plus skill charms are a big thing in Diablo 2, plus tab skills, obviously. Also the Annie, which gives you +1 skills, and the Torch, which gives you +3 skills. And altogether, if you have a Torch, that's 3. If you have an Annie, that's 4. And then if you have your entire inventory filled to the brim with tab charms, you can literally have, +14 to skills or something like that, which is kind of massive. And it does make things very difficult from a balancing perspective, especially when you're talking about like maximum power level and sacrificing all of your inventory to get that maximum power level. So it's interesting that they're talking about kind of not adding those plus to skill charms, because they pose a problem in, okay, well, if I don't have, +14 to skills from my charms, then my character sucks, right? So I guess what they're trying to say is they're trying to put us in a better position where the charms that we're choosing are giving us different stats and more interesting things than just simply plus to skills. I do like plus to skills, but at the same time, I also feel like the plus to skill charms specifically may have just gone a little bit too far in Diablo 2. It would be interesting to see the game balanced, to balance the charms out, so that you just basically always have the charms or something. And that way you can actually put other things in your charm slots, and maybe even not put things in there so you can have more inventory space. Who knows? It's interesting to read some of this stuff. I wonder if he has any other posts in here. This is the second screenshot of the Highlands biome. I think I already showed that one. Meteors placeholder. Ooh. Ultra low res, low FPS, terrain destruction is what they're showing off. So that the meteors are actually destroying the terrain. That's rather interesting. Uh, I'm interested to see how this game develops, and we have probably many years before this game gets into its full production, is released, and actually, for all of us to see. But it's interesting to see the ideas of the games forming. It's also just interesting to hear what the original Diablo II developers have to say on some of this stuff, and kind of go over some of it and talk about it. I wonder what this one has. We wanted to make a fully moddable ARPG terrain level editor. Hmm. Let's go over this one, shall we? Level editing, procedural generation, deformable terrain, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my. Reddit isn't the best place to blog and read long posts, but it'll do for now. Anyway, I'm going to try and post something interesting about the Moonbeast project on the regular. I hope it's interesting, and I welcome feedback and suggestions as to the content of future posts. Storytime. We wanted to make a fully moddable ARPG. To do that, we needed not only terrain or a level editor, but one that integrates with procedurally generated levels. This post isn't about the latter bit, but rest assured we are going back to our roots, and our levels are procedurally generated, much more so than most ARPGs these days. This post is about what our desire for an accessible level editing tool led us to. So first off, we need a visual terrain editor. No one wants to define levels in a text editor. Not since the 1980s anyway. We wanted to work this way directly from within our client, because that's just better than having to download or boot up another application. And that's the philosophy we have toward all our modding tools. Cody is starting up his Bork engine. Get your Borker running. He's getting ready his heckin' Bork. And I totally lost my place. Furthermore, we wanted this to work online. No, that's not where I left off. It has to be easy to use, but be able to produce high-fidelity environments that at least get close to our modern ARPGs that are mostly constructed out of large set pieces. Furthermore, we wanted this to work online because cloud, but this is starting to sound complicated. Making a great game and a great editor is a lot of work. Is there maybe some way to make it easier? Enter the bright idea. We need a skill system. How about if we make all level editor functions skills? Creators will need to create skills anyway. If level editor functions are basic skill building blocks, then they'll be able to put them together in interesting ways, and they'll be able to extend the level editor themselves by combining them into new skills. And skills work in multiplayer, which means players will be able to create their own worlds together collaboratively. And that sounds kind of great. So that's what we started building. But how do we make it look good? We thought about all the different types of terrain and levels in World of Warcraft, Warcraft 3, Diablo II, Diablo 3, Diablo 4, in Torchlight, Marvel Heroes, in Hellgate London, Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, Minecraft, Valheim, Super Mario Galaxy, and Tomb Raider, and Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. We covered a lot of ground because there are a lot of ways to build levels, and there was stuff we could learn from all of those. In the end, or maybe it's just really the middle, we came up with something pretty cool. It's chunky and grid-based, which makes it very easy to work with, but it's also got fine details and lots of soft edges, which makes it look good. It does real-time mesh generation and tessellation, and words that I don't know the meaning of, thanks to Brian Bazik, you brilliant madman. It looks unique and beautiful, and it's fun to just run around and see all the stuff that somehow got procedurally generated, and to take it in the sunsets and waterfalls and canyons and ruined temples. And we can take a brush and paint on it and raise the terrain and lower it, cut out pieces, and change the biome. It's all exactly what we wanted. And then came Fireball, and we thought, we can generate this terrain in real time, right? Shouldn't Fireball leave a crater where it hits? And a few hours later, I'm stuck in a giant pit as 6 flaming, slinging goblins dig me a hole I can't get out of. It's freaking hilarious. You can probably guess what comes next. It's just a short way from Fireball to Meteor Swarm. One press of a button and the landscape goes from idyllic grassy meadow and rolling hills to pit of slagged and blackened rock. You bet I hold the button down and start digging my way to hell. I've kind of gone long and need to catch the train. We've started out making a pretty regular ARPG without modding, and now we're making something spectacular. Stay tuned because there's a lot more to come. So, I guess this goes back to his meteors here blowing up the terrain. They're talking about how they made the terrain and how the terrain is procedurally generated, as well as basically that you can destroy the terrain with your explosive effects. So as you can see here, he's literally digging himself a hole in the ground. He falls into said hole, and if he kept going, I'm assuming he would just, like he said, dig his way down to hell. That's pretty interesting. I think that pretty much covers everything for now. I'll pick this up next time they make a new post. And as always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.